Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. In a diplomatic setback for India, the US Congress has called on New Delhi to end the humanitarian crisis imposed in occupied Kashmir for the last 2 months. In a report, the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations asked India to end its communications blackout and lift the curfew in the valley. The lawmakers have asked India to end curfew, lift communications blackout and release all the arrested from the valley. It is the first time that the US Congress has taken an initial step towards legislative action against India. The Senate committee report was introduced by Senator Chris Van Hollen. In an interview, Hollen said the US is closely monitoring the situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Hollen said the Indian government recently denied him permission to visit the valley to assess the on-ground situation. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has once again expressed concerns over the grave situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. In a briefing, the UN chief spokesman Stefan Dujarric said Guterres has asked Pakistan and India to resolve the Kashmir crisis through dialogue. Dujarric said the Secretary General's position on Kashmir has not changed. He said Guterres has underscored the need for addressing human rights abuses in the occupied valley. Dujarric said the UN Secretary General believes human rights must be at the forefront of a resolution of the Kashmir crisis. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called on Azad Kashmir residents to exercise restraint and not cross the line of control to help their besieged brethren. Khan said anyone crossing the line of control to provide humanitarian aid to Kashmiris would play into the hands of India's skewed narrative. Occupied Kashmir has been cut off from the rest of the world for the last 62 days after India stripped the region of its autonomy and imposed a curfew and communications blackout. There is now a shortage of food and medicine in the valley. Details in this report.
The crisis in occupied Kashmir is rapidly turning into a humanitarian crisis. Presence of 900,000 troops has turned the valley into a prison. Thousands of Kashmiri leaders and activists have been arrested since India revoked the special status of Kashmir on the 5th of August.
When we fainted, they gave us shock to bring us back around. They put mud in our mouth. They said, "Don't scream, don't scream." Why are you screaming? I told them, don't beat us, just shoot us.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has asked the world to intervene to stop the human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. Khan warned that India could stage a false flag operation to divert the world's attention from the Kashmir issue.
In India, the police have begun criminal proceedings against 50 celebrities for protesting against the mob lynching of minorities. The celebrities raised their voices in a letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The note was signed by prominent personalities including Bollywood filmmakers Anurag Kashyap and Mani Ratnam and actress Kokanna Sen. Their letter to Modi demanded an immediate end to mob lynchings of Muslims, Dalits and other minorities. They say there can be no democracy in India without dissent. The police say a so-called first investigation report has been registered against the celebrities in eastern Bihar state on the orders of a local court. They say a lawyer had petitioned the court to seek criminal proceedings against the 50, accusing them of tarnishing India's image. After days of unrest, Iraq's Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi has ordered the curfew in Baghdad to be lifted after the government's clampdown on protesters. Iraqi lawmakers have demanded the resignation of Mahdi's government. In a statement, powerful Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr called on the government to hold snap elections. Former Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, who leads the third largest parliamentary bloc, has also called for the government's resignation. In the meantime, hospital officials say the death toll from the violence between the protesters and police has risen to 65. Iraq has been rocked by days of protests, but thousands of people demonstrating against endemic corruption and chronic level of unemployment. Moving on to Palestine, where Israeli forces have killed a Palestinian and wounded 14 others during protests along the Gaza border. They were protesting against the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip. Palestine's health ministry said Israeli troops fired live ammunition and rubber bullets at the peaceful protesters. Israeli forces have killed over 300 Palestinians and wounded about 18,000 others since the weekly protests began in March last year. Saudi Arabia has given a positive response to a truce offer from Houthi rebels in Yemen. Vice Defense Minister Khalid bin Salman says Riyadh hopes the truce will be implemented effectively. Prince Khalid accused Iran of exploiting the situation in Yemen. A Saudi-led coalition has been battling Houthi rebels in Yemen since 2015. Last month, the Houthis announced they were ready to make peace with Saudi Arabia. The UN says tens of thousands have been killed in the 4-year-long conflict. A Syrian rebel group has pledged to back a Turkish operation against Kurdish fighters in northeast Syria. Rebel leader Abdurrahman Mustafa says people in the area of east of the Euphrates have been forced to leave their homes. Mustafa said he is supporting Turkey to end this injustice. In September, Turkish and the US military officials agreed to develop a peace corridor for displaced Syrians. But Turkey later accused the US of providing arms to Kurdish fighters. Ahead of their visit to Pakistan, the Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge have said they are looking forward to building a lasting friendship with the country. In a statement, Kensington Palace released the details of Prince William and Kate Middleton's official tour. The palace officials said the royal couple will visit Islamabad, Lahore and northern areas of the country. It said they will also interact with organizations which focus on empowering young people. The royal couple has requested to be provided with ample opportunities to interact with Pakistanis as much as possible. The statement said Duke and Duchess are keen to learn about the climate change issues affecting Pakistan. The British royal couple will arrive in Pakistan for the 5-day visit on 14th of October. Greece is accusing Turkey of exploiting Europe's migrant crisis for its political ends. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis says Turkey should control the migrant flows to Europe. Mitsotakis called for the EU-Turkish deal to be revised so Athens can speed up the return of rejected asylum seekers. In 2016, the EU and Turkey agreed to seal off the Aegean route to stop migration to Europe. But the number of migrants has risen since August to the highest monthly level since the deal. Turkey has threatened to open the gates unless it receives global support for a plan to resettle 1 million refugees in northern Syria. In Washington, Democratic lawmakers have subpoenaed documents from the White House as part of their impeachment inquiry against President Trump. The documents relate to a recent telephone call which Trump used to urge Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate his rival Joe Biden. The subpoena was issued by the chairman of the House of Representatives Committees for Oversight, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs. The committees have given Trump until October the 18th to hand over the documents. A separate request for records has also been sent to Vice President Mike Pence to clarify what role he may have played in Trump's overtures to Ukraine. In the meantime, Trump has denied any wrongdoing and says he will formally object to Congress's impeachment inquiry. In the United States, President Donald Trump's administration has passed a new decree against legal migrants. White House has issued a proclamation banning immigrants from obtaining U.S. visas if they cannot afford to pay for their own medical care. The order says immigrants must now show they can obtain health insurance within 30 days of their arrival. The administration says people seeking asylum and refuge will not be affected by the new law. The measure comes into force from November the 3rd. In the United States, aides to Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders say he suffered a heart attack earlier this week. Campaign advisor Jeff Weaver said the veteran senator underwent emergency surgery after complaining of the chest pain at the campaign event in Nevada. Weaver said the doctors operated on 78-year-old Sanders to remove a blockage in one of his arteries. In a statement issued after he was discharged from hospital, Sanders said he is now feeling great and looks forward to getting back to work. Sanders has centered his presidential campaign on a promise to provide free medical care to all Americans. After weeks of unrest, Hong Kong is banning people from wearing masks at public assemblies. The government invoked a tough colonial-era emergency law to enforce the ban. Speaking at a press conference, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, said violence is destroying the city and the situation can't be allowed to deteriorate further. Lam expressed concern at the participation of students in the protests, saying it jeopardized their safety, but she denied Hong Kong is in a state of emergency. U.S. tech giant Microsoft has accused Iranian hackers of targeting the U.S. presidential campaign. The company's vice president, Tom Bird, says a hacking group linked to Iran has carried out cyber attacks on U.S. journalists and the government officials. Bird said only 4 accounts were compromised by the group's significant cyber activity. The group, which Microsoft calls Phosphorus, used information gathered by researching their targets. Bird says the group used the information to gain password reset features and attempt to take over targeted accounts. Microsoft has informed the account owners, advising them to ramp up their online defenses. Moving on to South America, where Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno says protests in the country are under control and will end soon. On Tuesday, the president declared a nationwide state of emergency when the controversial removal of oil subsidies was announced. Moreno defended the lifting of the 40-year-old subsidy on oil, saying it is necessary to improve the economy. Indigenous groups and students have been protesting in the capital Quito and the city of Guayaquil against the move. Moreno says the protests will not be allowed to paralyze Ecuador.
A team of ministers in Quito have informed me that the areas of violence are being controlled almost totally, as is the case here in Guayaquil, where violence has also broken out. The state of emergency, ECU 911, has helped me manage operations. I have come here to Guayaquil.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says over 14,000 Afghan children have faced grave violations in the last 4 years. He said 3,500 youngsters have been killed and over 9,000 injured in the continuing conflict. The report released by the UN shows an increase of 82% in child casualties within the last 4 years. Guterres said armed groups were responsible for 43% of child casualties, while the government forces were responsible for 30%. 5 crew members have been killed after a Ukrainian cargo airplane made an emergency landing near the western city of Lviv. Ukraine's infrastructure minister Vladislav Kureli said the landing was made because the plane ran out of fuel. The emergency services said the plane vanished from radar when it was 14 kilometers away from the airport. The Soviet-designed 4-engine plane was flying from Lviv from Spain. The death toll from Al-Qaeda-linked militant attacks on Mali's military camps has risen to 38. Mali's defense ministry says almost 60 of their soldiers are still missing. The ministry says it has launched a joint operation in the region with forces from Burkina Faso. Officials have blamed the attacks on militant groups which have set up operations in parts of Mali. Meanwhile, in Bamako, families of Malian soldiers protested against the missing persons. Worldwide, October has been renamed Pinktober to highlight the fact that it is being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Details in this report.
It is an international campaign aimed at increasing awareness of the second most common cancer in women, with the goal of someday stopping it.
Breast cancer is the only cancer which can be diagnosed at early stage. So the whole idea of celebrating Pink Ribbon Month is to aware our women on the seriousness of issue of breast cancer, and then to tell them how to do early examination, what are the steps, what are the symptoms.
Many health agencies have highlighted a number of ways in which the disease can be prevented or diagnosed early for timely treatment. The diagnosis and subsequent treatment follows a clear prognosis.
So the basic, first of all, is diagnosis through ultrasound, through mammogram, then through biopsy. And then it might be surgery first, because again, it's like each patient is a different case. So we need to see either first we go for chemotherapy, or we go for surgery, or we go for radiation.
Some experts say the cancer can be produced by a high volume of meat in the diet or the consumption of foods injected with steroids.
Mexican volcano Popocatepetl has erupted, blowing a dramatic ash column into the sky. The volcano has blown lava and rocks up to 2,000 meters into the air. Popocatepetl is over 5,000 meters high, making it the second highest mountain in Mexico. The volcano is the fifth highest in North America. In northern Italy, unseasonal weather caused by climate change is wreaking havoc amongst bees, which are one of the most important insect species on the planet. The world's crucial pollinators are vital for farming, and wild plants are struggling for survival in the unusually early heat. More in this report.
The beekeepers stand beside piles of beehives, worried and anxious. Not having honey is the least of their problems. This year, the bees could make only tiny quantities of honey, not even enough to keep alive, sparking fears for their future. Climate change is causing habitat loss for bees unable to migrate to cooler areas and establish new hives. The world's honeybees are in steep decline, with 10 million hives disappearing in only the last 3 years. Fighting back tears at the fate of his charges over the summer, Italian beekeeper Riccardo Polide said this year was the hardest harvest of his life.
We're not talking about low production or a lower production than normal. We are talking about pitiful quantities of honey that is not even enough to keep the bees alive.
Samuele Culata, a beekeeping technician, blames increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for the reduction in nectar production.
Plants must defend themselves from extra carbon dioxide, and as a result, they reduce certain activities, including nectar production.
The Italian Apiarist Association has asked the government to declare a national disaster so beekeepers can benefit from aid. The association, however, is not optimistic about the future.
The Warner Brothers movie Joker has hit theaters despite a wave of criticism that it glorifies a killer and could encourage copycat attacks nationwide. The public on Hollywood Boulevard differed in their opinions when asked about added security to Joker screenings in the US. More in this report.
The movie, starring Joaquin Phoenix, is about a marginalized clown who goes on a killing rampage.
Same questions every week. How's your job?
Weeks of publicity surrounding the disturbing portrait of a bullied loner has raised fears of a violence outbreak. 7 years ago, a gunman opened fire on moviegoers watching The Dark Knight Rises, killing 12. Police in major US cities have been on alert as the film opened in theaters.
I think for the most part it probably is just a film, right? But at the same time, there's been some pretty crazy things happen in the past, so it doesn't hurt, like I said, I don't think, to be prepared. I think it's fine.
However, not everyone felt safe about the idea of seeing the film in a cinema.
I would wait a while for it to die down before I go to see it, and I'm conflicted about it because of the issues in America right now with gun violence and it's a tough time right now. So.
Warner Media says the movie does not aim to hold this character up as a hero.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. Further updates, stay tuned with Indus News.